Thank you. I'm used to arguing cases before one judge, two judges, three judges, or five judges. But today, Dr. Agarwal has put me before all of you, who are all so learned, I'm getting nervous. So I would start with a caveat. Whatever I'm saying today, whatever I say today, you all should take with a pinch of salt. For the simple reason, I've been known only as a brick and mortar advocate, not as an intellectual property rights advocate. Except that on few occasions, courtesy Mr. Lakshmi Kumaran, way back in 1988 or 90s, and then Mr. Khalib Gabriel, and thereafter Mr. Rajendra Kumar. I have done few of the cases, and they're all basically relating to litigation. Court is my court, so I play the game there. But it's difficult to play such kind of game before this August party. Gentlemen, though I had many number of ideas to share with you, because of my office and because of my own inadequacy, I would not be putting forward and much except to state that I missed all of the fun and all of the knowledge which you all have shared in last few days. In that perspective, whatever I could gather in the shortest time which has been given by my friends here to come and deliver this valedictory function, this lecture, I just would share some of the thoughts which I have. Though I have put, there's about 7-8 pages note which I have prepared, I rather skip that and then stick to what comes to my mind in the context of today's globalization. In fact, Dr. Agarwal has touched a very raw nerve in me in stating that the contribution of Indian community from the industry as against US, where 34% of industry is based on IP. Then the question which I was asking myself, is it that we are so deficient that we are not contributing to the IP in the sector, to the world at large? When you go back to history, 5,000 years back, we had very knowledgeable Vedas. Over the period, we have lost the command over the language, the original Sanskrit, which I believe is the mother of all languages. In fact, very recently, I had been to Dubai. There I found the Dubai government administration in their museum had proudly said that we had given numbers to the world, Arabic numbers which we use 1, 2, 3, 4 has been given to the world. And thankfully, they had acknowledged there stating that these numbers are derivative from the Sanskrit. And I know as a matter of fact, Germans have taken many of the manuscripts in Sanskrit from India and they are decoding and they are utilizing. Unfortunately, in our country, we are not doing that. But that's a different part of the story. In that context, as I said, the 34% of industry in the US, why it is running in a particular fashion, why they are able to exploit the intellectual property, and why the Indians as such, we are not exploiting that. One piece of information and analysis which I have done, my niece is in US. She has done a doctorate by spending 7 long years to get the doctorate in US and contributed something, and ultimately, finally, she got a doctorate. But to whom this intellectual property belongs to? The university which had given her a stipend of $1,000 per month for about 3 years or 4 years. Now you know the secret of the Western world getting the IP from where and who are contributing. And I also made a little bit of analysis. I'm speaking out from my heart. Please If somebody feels bad about it, my apologies, and at the same time I can't help. The reason why I am saying, in fact I had made a little bit of analysis and seen that none of the management students or art students other than faculty in engineering and sciences from India get scholarships or seats in many of the Western universities. I would like all of my friends to go and introspect and call up their cousins, friends, etc., and find out how many non-science students, non-engineering students have been given institution admissions in various universities across the world. I can say with confidence, virtually none. Except, again, with respect to non-science, in economics, I find some of the bright young economic minds have gone abroad and studied in London School of Economics, etc., and in Harvard universities, Oxford, but ultimately they go back and contribute to the either United Nations organizations or to the American society or to the other societies. But that's the intellectual property. As I said, Mr. Agarwal has touched my raw nerve. Then what's the remedy? Remedy is simple. I would like to ask one question, including to Dr. Agarwal and also to Dr. Malti, Lakshmi Kumaran. How many of our organizations are supporting the innovation? How many of our youngsters, why they are going abroad? And what is the support which they are receiving? If they are not receiving the stimulus, the support from us, that's the cause they go and contribute. And the best part of the analysis which I have made with respect to this IP, I may be wrong, that's why I said caveat. That I very much appreciate and I laud and I say my hats off to the American society, American intellectuals, and Western society and Western intellectuals. They have a plan, they execute a plan, and it's a very well-designed plan. A project is conceived. The project is divided into thousands of small components. And those thousands of components have been given to universities for research. And all the research which has been done by various people, including Americans, including Germans, including whoever it is, the students, the brains, it gets collated at a particular point of time and it gets sold as an IP to the other worlds. I would like to the users of IP, because you all know that what is the use of IP and also the protection that is needed. I am sure that 99% of the speakers in last 3 days would have spoken about the protection that needs to be given to the IP. But the best part is what exactly it does to the countries like India or to the much more underdeveloped countries in African countries. You all know with regard to the HIV medicine, AIDS and HIV medicine, and the uproar in African countries, which ultimately, though companies were made to back down by reduction of the prices. In recent times, in Indian context also, there was an issue with regard to cancer medicine. Nothing wrong in making profit. But the question is the measure. And the money which goes into research and development is one of the justification which is sought to be given for the purpose of IP protection. They deserve that protection, that they deserve encouragement for innovation. But at the same time, ultimately, as someone said, is that innovators do not innovate for the purpose of the gain. Innovators really, if you say XYZ company has innovated, it is not that XYZ company which has innovated. It is an individual in that XYZ company who has innovated, who had contributed. Probably what he gets out of that company is a sustenance or some kind of a reward for a particular time. But the major exploitation is done by the corporations. There is nothing wrong in that. But at the same time, what is required to be looked into is that in the end, ultimately, entire of innovation should benefit the humanity at large. In that context, if they do not have the heart, that's where it hurts. And that's where probably different countries have evolved a system and methodology to see that till a particular time, they reach a particular stage of sustaining themselves. They come out with various mechanisms. Those mechanisms, from the point of perspective, if I am being the other side of the coin and I would have been a lawyer, I would have been very vociferously arguing, basing on the empirical data, how it helps and how it does not help. In the end, ultimately, my request to all my friends would be, please support the IP development, please encourage the IP development, but at the same time, with a human face. I would not like to touch upon any of the statistics, though, as I said, the 8 pages of entire of my preparation, somehow I am very reluctant to get into that now, after hearing Dr. Agarwal. So far as the issues are concerned, as I said, the key issue is with regard to the statistics and the benefit that ultimately inures to the society at large. With regard to enforcement difficulties, each country has its own difficulties. But in the end, if the result is not flowing to the common man, even for a price, when I say common man, I'm not a guy who recommends or who is the advocate of the populistic measures which many of the governments are adopting to. Even for a price, that price is to the extent that you contribute to the society and also to your shareholders to whom you owe a responsibility on account of the culture, corporate culture. But in the end, we all will have to recognize one important aspect of human life is that finiteness, what in Sanskrit they call it as anitya. The very temporal nature of the very existence of the human life. Somebody may say that I may live up to 100 years, but in the very interesting aspect which has been very recently I had come across is 43,028 lakh years, that is about 438,000 years, consists of one night for the creator in Indian culture, which is called as Brahma. 43,28,000 years is one night for Brahma. And the one more night is another same night. That means for a day, for a Brahma or for the Almighty, it's about something like about 84 or 86 lakh years. 86 million years. So if that is the kind of the time scale which we are visualizing, the infinite, the very finite existence of ours, 80 years, 70 years, 60 years is nothing. Maybe that some of the American corporations have survived 200 years. But at the same time, there are also corporations like Lehman Brothers who have gone, 150 years of Lehman Brothers have gone down the drain. Likewise, the Arthur Andersen, Enron, and India also many of the corporations. But the fact remains that the finiteness of our existence In that process, let us all contribute to the betterment of the humanity. And with that note, with the fond hope, I would like to take leave of you, and I would like to thank everyone for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.